talking about the Governors Forum, of course we know, and I told my director, he asked me a question, Governors Forum, which group? And I said, Rotimi Amici Group. He said, that's the progressive group. Having said that, and with the tone of discussion set by the Professor Grace Aley Williams, talking about improving access to education, and talking about its quality. Of course, yes. If at a point in time, you and my good self did not have access to education, definitely you and I will not be here this afternoon. If at a point in time, you and I did not receive good education, definitely you and I will not be here this afternoon. It was so beautiful in the 70s, in the 60s, and for some, let me say in the 50s, or perhaps in the 40s, can we say that it's as good as it used to be? Talking about access, talking about quality. Of course, our country is the most popular African country. And talking about the ethnic groups, we have about more than 200 ethnic groups with over 500 languages. And again, we say that it is the largest, is the 13th largest oil producer in the world and the second largest economy in Africa after South Africa. With this, can we say that education in this country, that every child, including the girl child, has access to good education, not just to education, good education. And we can say, of course, talking about the available indicators, that this country is richly blessed. But then, can we say this has translated into quality? Of course, your answer is as good as mine. You will agree with me that the sector, the education sector, is in a crisis. And the reason why I asked the questions the other time, that if you and I were exposed to good education then, I mentioned in the 70s, because that was the year, that was the period I received education. For some in the 60s, for some in the 40s, in the 50s and 40s. But can we say in the 21st century, talking about the presence, that our own children, or do we say an average child in Nigeria receives good education? I will say no. Of course, at the primary school level, secondary and tertiary education levels, we know that the story has always been the same. December last year, ASU called off the strike, I think about almost 6 months strike. Before ASU went on strike, lecturers in polytechnics and the College of Education were on strike, and they are still on strike till this moment. Is anybody talking about those youths who were supposed to be receiving education? I'm not even talking about good education. And who have been out of school for close to a year now. What becomes of them? Of course, when we resumed in December in the university, we knew what happened. That many of our students, of course, have been put in family ways. That's talking about the effects of not getting it right, even when it comes to education. And we do have strikes, we do have problems. And when we have these challenges, then I said it could result in shortages of human resources. The other time, the chairperson mentioned about the quality of teachers that they would teach our children. Of course, if we don't get it right, then this will also affect the quality of teaching and instruction. So as I mentioned, the poor quality of teachers. Then we have the issue of the brain drain as well. Then the issue of poor infrastructures in the system. It's even a bit okay in the university. But at the primary sector, secondary sector is so terrible. Of recent, the Deputy Governor of Oyo State is here. At the University of Ibadan, we carried out a project for the state government on education. Of course, I was part of the team that went out. I'm not saying that this started with this administration, but the rot has been in existence for years. It's so offensive, even to me as a teacher, when I visit such schools and the way and manner I see those learners in the classroom. I ask myself the question, when I was in secondary school, this is not the kind of environment I studied. And for that very reason, one would expect them to give their best and to do well. Of course, that will not happen. In 1997, the Federal Ministry of Education, following a nationwide tour of the school, stated that the basic infrastructure in school, such as classrooms, laboratories, workshops, sporting facilities, equipment, libraries, were in a state of total decay. Of course, it is true. We don't need any intervention. We don't need any study for us to determine this. It's obvious. It's all over the place. And if we're talking about the laboratories, I wonder how many secondary schools at the sub-national level have good laboratories. I wonder how many secondary schools at the sub-national level have good workshops. I was in a program of recent in Ibadan, and I think that was as a result of the hearings that followed the announcement by WAEC that 39 subjects will be examined come May, June. And people were asking, are these learners ready? You see, people were thinking that WAEC was just introducing the 39 subjects. I said, no. These were introduced some 4 years ago. WAEC expected that these students must have been exposed to these subjects. Then WAEC is now about to examine those learners. But then we're talking about plumbing, carpentry, welding, and so on and so forth. Of course, you can stay in the classroom and talk about plumbing, theories, but the practical aspects, how many schools in Nigeria at the sub-national level have good functioning workshops where students were exposed very well to plumbing, carpentry, welding, even if they were so exposed. How many schools have electricity? If they don't have electricity, how many schools have high-power generators? These are issues. And I quickly concluded at the program that, yes, these students will only go, of course, if they be so trained and they register for 1 or 2 of the so-called 39 subjects. Then, if WAEC is testing for just theorists, students may do well, but if talking about the practical aspects, of course, they will not do well. So talking about the physical condition of schools, as reported in the 1997 study by the Federal Ministry of Education, that schools were in very terrible states all over the country. Another very crucial factor is funding of education. Of course, my union has been talking so much about this. In fact, it was the basic, and up till now, the basis for most of the strikes, talking about the funding of education. And just yesterday, I was listening to the national president, the national chairman of ASU, talking about that very soon there will be a summit, educational summit in Nigeria, which lets people come and discuss education. That we just have to get it right. And again, there are other problems when it comes to education.